Mayor Bass, thank you so much for joining us today. I think our community is in the midst of very troubling times right now, so we appreciate you speaking directly with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So we're now 6 months into a second Donald Trump presidency here in the United States. Here in Los Angeles, our immigrant communities have been feeling it a lot, and they've been severely impacted by his administration's tactics and his decisions. Can you speak to your long-term vision for immigrant policies and protections here in Los Angeles?
I'm so honored to be a Californian and an Angelino because we embrace immigrants. We are a diverse city, and we always have, and we have a long tradition of that in this city. Immigrant rights is an issue that's been important to me for several decades. And I think that laws and policies that we have put in place, really that have been in place for years, unfortunately are being tested now in ways that we would have never imagined. Because we would have never imagined the federal government coming in and literally seizing power from the governor over the National Guard and bringing the National Guard and the Marines to LA when we didn't need them. Nothing was going on. And then basically masked, armed men in unmarked cars, snatching people out of places. Immigration has always been an issue. There's always been immigration enforcement, but nothing has ever happened before like we're seeing today.
Yes, and you mentioned masked personnel and vehicles without identification. So what can be done to protect the Angelino or average citizen, whether they're an immigrant or not, from these people who are unable to be identified? And what can be done to protect, us from them?
And to make it worse, who are they?
Who are they?
We don't know if this has happened here in Los Angeles, but it has happened in other cities where it's been criminals that have been impersonating federal agents. Right now, we're in a situation where we don't know who they are, and we're looking to see if there can be a remedy through the courts, like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
A remedy through the courts, an injunction that stops it. So I've been in conversation with our city attorney, and we're working on that right now, appealing to the Trump administration to say, you are wreaking havoc in our city, causing entire populations to be living in terror, people to not go to work, people to not go to school. I was in East LA on Father's Day in front of restaurants that were completely empty when it should have been lines down the street. People afraid to leave their home and not wanting to buy groceries, so now we're having to come up with ways to make sure that they get food. Children who went through Father's Day not knowing what happened to their fathers. This is just a reign of terror that has been imposed on our city, and looking for every avenue possible. But the most frightening thing about it is the highest level of law in our country is the federal government.
You mentioned the federal government. The Supreme Court just made a decision this morning impacting birthright citizenship. Can you speak to their decision this morning, your thoughts?
Oh, sure. I thought it actually impacted birthright citizenship because that's kind of how it was billed. But actually it was looking at the power of a lower court to stop a presidential executive order. So, and that's scary because we know that Trump has issued some outrageous executive orders. And we have relied on, until now, lower courts to provide an injunction that says you can't do this. A higher court has to figure it out. My understanding, and I am not a lawyer, that the decision that was made today says that a lower court cannot do an injunction that applies to the entire nation. Now, what I don't know is that if a court in California was able to win an injunction, can it just apply to California? I don't know that, not being a lawyer, but after they come out with a Supreme Court decision, it takes about a week for all the lawyers to work and really understand and interpret it.
So you mentioned Trump militarized the city of Los Angeles, whether Governor Newsom asked for it or not, he didn't. Can you speak to the current status of Trump's military presence here in Los Angeles? Are they still here?
Yes, and in part I can't speak to it. You know why? Because we don't know. What I do know, of course, is that he has deployed thousands of National Guard soldiers as well as Marines to the city. That doesn't mean there's thousands that are here. Sometimes they're waiting and posted outside of the city. There's no need for them here. You know, basically what they're doing is that they're guarding two buildings. They're guarding the federal building where nothing is happening at the federal building. So it is a misuse of our young men and women who are in the military. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that National Guard soldiers are regular people. They're at work, they're at school, they have their families. They are called out of those environments, forced into these deployments for no reason, because they're props. They're being staged as part of what I believe is an experiment of the federal government to see how far the public will accept federal intervention in a state. And he decided to come to the nation's largest state, most diverse state, a state that embraces immigrants and always has. He decided to use us as the test case. You can imagine if he is successful here, what that says for states around the country.
Have you been able to speak with him?
I've not spoken with him. I have put in an official request.
So when ICE shows up, many Angelenos feel they have no one to call except organizations like Chirla and Unión del Barrio. Is there a way to activate and inform community police advisory boards so that they can help share resources, support residents, and combat ICE intimidation tactics?
You know, I don't know about police advisory boards. I mean, police advisory boards are made up of community members. But we are fortunate to have organizations like Chirla, who I have known and worked with for, 40 years now, because we have a solid immigrant rights infrastructure here. And that is probably the best bet in terms of the rapid response network. That's why people have been able to show up on the scene. But I do have to caution people, because in people's anger and outrage, we have to remember that in many cases, they are federal people. If you intervene, you could be charged with serious felonies. And what worries me is that this administration is just chomping at the bit to prosecute. So I don't want to see our folks get in trouble trying to intervene in something that they're not going to be able to stop. So we have to be careful. This is an entirely different situation.
I want to show you a video, if that's okay. This is the video from 9th and Spring Street. You've seen it, I'm sure, by now. It shows LAPD appearing to protect and cooperate with federal agents. This appears, to contradict your prior statements that LAPD is not working with federal agents. What is your response to this footage?
Sure. Well, first of all, it is so troubling, and it's troubling in so many different ways. But that's why I said a few minutes ago that we've passed sanctuary city policies, but they're being tested now in ways that we would have never imagined. And so what I understand the backstory of that situation is that people saw, regular residents saw what looked like the young woman, not look like what was, her being snatched off the street. If I'm not mistaken, the men that did that are not properly identified, and they called in a kidnapping. They call in a kidnapping, LAPD goes to respond to that and sees that scene. So you have a situation that's happening now because of the unprecedented nature in which these raids are taking place, that it's testing what our policies are. And I think it's been very, very confusing. And so what I have called upon and what I know is underway is in Los Angeles, we're governed, the police department is governed by a police commission, Citizen Volunteer Police Commission. And we need them to examine exactly all of the things that went down, but not just there. There was the police response to the protests as well. What happened in those incidences? And they need to do it, and they need to do it quickly. Not an investigation or a response that's going to take months and months. But because we're in uncharted territory, we have to figure out what to do here.
You've posted multiple times about Shine LA, an initiative to clean up residential protest graffiti. I think Angelenos have, expressed mixed feelings because they feel, some of them feel that the issue is, should be focused on is ICE separating immigrant families. How do you respond to Angelenos who are upset?
Well, let me just tell you too, I thought you were going to ask me something different about Shine LA. What I'm going to worry about Shine LA now, like we're worrying about everywhere, is if you have public gatherings of people, are they at risk, you know? I have to, running the city, have to focus on multiple issues at the same time. I wish I could just focus on one issue, but that's impossible. So Shine LA was something that was supposed to have been started at the beginning of the year. The point of Shine LA is to galvanize the city, bring the city together to prepare for the World Cup coming next year. And so this week's Shine LA is going to be at El Pueblo, our city's first street, in Alvera Street, because unfortunately, and it hurt my heart, for protesters to vandalize Alvera Street and to put obscenities in graffiti on a symbol of immigration. The other symbol of immigration downtown that was vandalized is the Japanese American Museum, which tells the whole story about the internment of the Japanese. So that, to me, that type of protest, you're not supporting immigrants. If you deface the very institutions that are holding up symbols of immigration. And so Shine LA is still important. Absolutely, I have to focus on ICE and what is happening to the immigrant population. But it's not just focusing on ICE. It's about making sure that people that are held up in their house get the groceries that they need. It's about making sure that people that can't pay their rent don't wind up evicted as well. So we have to do all of that at the same time.
I'm glad you mentioned your concern over large gatherings and events going down in the city, you know, in these times, because several cities in LA County have already canceled their 4th of July celebrations. The 4th of July celebrations, not just because of a pandemic, which happened 4 years ago, or but because they're feeling threatened that ICE is going to come and terrorize their community.
Well, let me tell you about what we're contemplating canceling. We have this events every summer called Summer Night Lights.
Yes.
And it's a gang prevention, violence prevention project. People and families go to parks and engage in recreational activities. And a lot of former gang-involved young people are there as peacemakers, community interventionists. And we're contemplating that we might not be able to do that because we don't know if we can keep the families safe. And how ironic is that? Because the whole point of the event is to keep families safe and to have safe recreation activities in the summer. That program played a big role in reducing gang homicides last year. So unfortunately, the state that we're in right now, we're questioning all of these big gatherings where we don't want to have them because we don't want people to be subject to a raid.
And what does that say to you about the current state of our country?
Oh, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying because it leaves you feeling like, I mean, I will never lose hope. But we do have to understand that the highest level of law in our country is the federal government. And I was there during the first Trump administration. I was there during family separation. I went to McAllen, Texas. I watched kids who had been separated from their parents get reunited, especially the toddlers. They would walk in the room. They had been separated from their parents for months. They walk in, their parent is there totally going hysterical, and the kid is standing in shock. To me, I thought, and I do believe, that it will go down in history as one of the cruelest moments, equal to, what happened to the Japanese, what's happened to African Americans, what's happened. It's going to be one of those incidences. And to make it worse, there's about 1,000 kids that were separated from their families at the beginning of that policy. Nobody knows where they are now. They didn't track them. So they're floating around this country. Their parents were deported, or who knows, maybe their parents weren't deported. And when a parent was deported and separated from the child, the federal government's response then was the parent had to pay to get the child back. How's the parent going to do that? So having lived through that in the first Trump administration, I'm terrified at where we are now.
And here we are, month 6, right? It's a 4-year term. I mean, as Angelenos, I think, as the United States citizens, obviously we've felt it, but as Angelenos, we started the year with the fires, and then, they brought on more fires that weren't caused by nature.
Right.
What's your message to Angelenos now?
Let me just tell you something. I'm born and raised here. I've been in this city through some really tumultuous, horrible times, we always persevere because we're a strong city, we're a resilient population, we stick together. Even with all this immigration stuff going on, you haven't seen our city divided. You haven't seen anybody stand up and agree with this and promote this. Everybody, no matter who you are, what part of the city you are, what your background is, you have not seen any support for this at all. I think that's emblematic of the incredible city that we live in. That gives me tremendous hope. I know we can get past this. We have to stick together. And basically, the whole country is looking at us to be the example. So we have to stand up, not put up with this, and push back. And I do believe we will. And Shine LA is a part of that. It's a part of building that community spirit and hanging on to each other and having the hope that's going to get us through this. That's why I would never stop doing Shine LA to then do something else.
And on that note, we've already seen No King's Day protests, and there were protests before that to protest the administration and their immigration tactics. If there are protests to come, and I can almost assure you there will be. July 4th. There will be protests. Are you supportive of them?
Absolutely. There's no way. I mean, of course I do. I mean, I grew up as a young activist spending a good part of my time protesting. But let me just tell you that we absolutely have to. Could you imagine if we didn't protest? Then we're saying that this is okay. But where I draw the line is that if you really support immigrants, you're not going to tear up the city. Don't tear up the city and say you're doing it on behalf of immigrants, because you're not. All you're doing is inviting the military to come in. So it's inexcusable to me for there to be vandalism in the city, for there to be violence of any level.
Thank you so much for speaking with us, Mayor Bass. We truly appreciate your time and your work, and please keep advocating for our community.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and hopefully we'll stay in contact.
Thank you.